Hey guys, welcome to Think Tank. I have Lakshmi and Venky with me. So, welcome Lakshmi and Venky to the podcast. Lakshmi is just to give you a very brief introduction. So, Lakshmi was my friend when we did a course together on AI. And Lakshmi has worked on startups. He is a veteran in product industry. Um, Venky is a veteran in AI, like he is in AI since 2008 and is having a very inspiring journey and is working in one of the largest organization right now. So welcome Lakshmi and Venki to the podcast again. So I'll just Lakshmi, if you can just quickly introduce yourself, like how you got inspired and why you got into this AI space and what you are like kind of where is your vision, right? Like what you further want to do in this space.
Thanks for inviting me, Ankit. Thank you. My journey is more than 2 decades old. So started off with mainframes. So I come from that time, and having worked in Y2K problems. Okay, so just imagine we didn't have any introduction of AI at that time, right? So getting to starting to work in a computer science and in the IT field was itself as a proud thing to do at that time. So from there on, we moved into, I've seen the progression. So I've actually from mainframes to midframes to web technologies, Java, okay, and active server pages, ASP, and then Java, JSP, and then ASP.NET. So we have that kind of progression, right? So I've actually come through many languages, crossed many languages, seen many languages, coded many in many languages, and then got into a stage where I got an introduction into ERP, worked with the largest British bank for about 8 to 9 years, and got a chance to work in ERP software during that time. And we used to have a lot of interesting conversations during that time as well. I think that's when the AI was in conversation. So I would say mid 2005s, mid 2000s. So during that time, we used to have one conversation where it was actually laughable at that time. So one of our senior business directors called us because I was the production support manager at that time. He called us into his cabin, and along with my senior manager, we went in, and he started asking a lot of questions about. We were actually dealing with the HR technology product, so we were working in PeopleSoft mainly at that time. So he was saying a lot of things, a lot of complaints, issues. So typically you can understand an organization goes through, right? So daily issues and all that. So we were discussing all that. All of a sudden he said, "Mm, no, I don't like this system. The system should be in such a way that when I speak to it, when I say I want to apply leave from tomorrow to another 5 days, then it should apply on my behalf and send me a response back.
Okay.
And also let me know whether it is approved or not. It should talk to me." So we were actually laughing at that time.
Yeah,
So you can imagine where we are at this moment. Okay,
exactly.
so that is literally is possible now, and it is implementable now in an ERP product.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of journey we have actually gone through, and it is an interesting time that we are living in. And I was seeing one of the interviews in YouTube yesterday. That was of Sundar Pichai. Okay, so he was talking about the Pixel and the mobiles that he is using and experimenting with at this moment and all that. So during that time, he says, "Yeah, is like how human race found the importance of fire." Okay, so without fire, there is nothing in human race, right? So that's an important invention we had, and we actually figured out how to use fire. So similarly, he is actually saying that AI is going to be much better than that. So it's going to be way beyond that, and this is going to be a significant or defining moment in AI. And we are, I think, living in a very interesting times. And I am actually very fortunate to be living in this time because I'm also into startups now. Since 2018, I started up along with my friend. We are into product journey. We are building products, and we have few failed products. We have few products which are going to be built now. We are in the middle of building those products. So having worked on a couple of other startups as well, I understand how this product journey actually goes on. So I believe this is an interesting journey, and AI is actually adding embellishment to it.
Yeah, I think that was a great quote. Like AI is just like fire, right? Like it's
Yeah,
very essential because nowadays, if you see like Chat GPT and even the algorithms which are there, you can't imagine like we if we have to find some information back in those days, Lakshmi, we have to go to library and we have to see which is the best book, and then we have to search, right? Like in this book, where
right.
can I get the information? And I might not get the information that quickly, right? So the lead time to know or to get the information was so high, and it took so much efforts to get that. Nowadays, and even when Google was created, right, like you were having, it was a search engine and you can get some kind of recommendations or some pages on its search. But now, like you are getting custom, whatever you want, it comes straight away to you,
Yeah, right,
right?
right.
um, so it's
It's kind of spoon feeding you.
spoon
So
feeding you.
yeah, that's how
So
we can put it.
yeah, yeah. So I think going in future, it will be hard for these kids, especially to live without AI, right? Like they, for their projects or in their professional lives, they will be so much dependent on a friend. Like it. So I always say that right now, from 2015, AI is just like our friend, like, and it's my closest friend. So I'm so much dependent on my friend these days that I can't imagine my life without it. So that's great way to put that. Um, Venki, coming to you, right? If you can, like, I know you are in this field since a long time now. So just tell us about your journey, and what keeps you motivated, right? Why, what keep, what keeps you going, especially?
Sure. Thanks, Nigar. So I started my career in 2005, around 2005. I started as a programmer with TCS. In the initial days, I was working mostly around the ERP systems, Oracle ERP, and also moved to Oracle as application developer after some time. So that's when I was working with mostly with data, although the data is in the context of ERP. But some of these ERP customers are really, really big customers. So the volume of transactions should be very high. Might be dealing with performance issues related to the transactions and data corruption issues and so on, right? So essentially, like these was giving me the idea that data is the wheel of the organization. See, even if one transaction gets stuck and they're not able to clear, it would have a huge impact on a revenue even, that the organization could make on a particular day. So gradually, I also started doing my MS around the same time in 2008 in Bichpilani, where I was taking up a course called data mining as an elective, and it was called data mining then. The terms like data science and machine learning were not even coined by then, so it was called data mining. And it was mostly focused around the traditional machine learning algorithms like classification, decision trees, association learning, and so on. Right? But still, it was quite interesting. And it was also Netflix rating prediction competition, which was running around the same time. So these were the kind of ecosystem changes that were happening when I was getting into this place, and I already found that this ecosystem was very diverse, which means like, see, somebody to actually become an expert in this space, you really don't have to be somebody who has spent years on this. Because data, analyzing data, getting insights from data also implies how you put a lot of common sense, and also how you actually bring in other learnings that you got from your education. There is no one way to look at data. Especially when you want to get insights out of it. There is no one way that you can follow. You have to approach it with multiple facets and so on. So after this MS, I worked with Ericsson for some time. We were building a analytics product. That time it was called Analytics Suite. We were trying to build a product which was meant to analyze CDR records. Basically, CDR records are called detailed records,
Yeah.
and this is something not just for calls, like even a billing or any event that happens in a telecom system generates some set of files called CDRs, and you could analyze them, understand the patterns of usage, analyze and understand your network itself, the network performance, and so on. But this was very early. Probably like market really didn't even understand like what's the need for this product and how this product could be utilized, so on. So the product really didn't quite take off in 2008, 2010 time frame. And 2010, I took a break from work and I took a internship from TU Dortmund with the hope of proceeding with a PhD sometime. So that's when I spent close to a year in TU Dortmund. I mostly worked in the optimization and machine learning related space. And after this, I also joined RapidMiner, which is a popular drag and drop or rapid prototyping tool in the ML space. I joined RapidMiner as a software engineer and applied researcher, where I was building a product and also working in a couple of European research projects and so on. So one of them that was quite interesting is we were building some features specifically related to text for a pharma company where they wanted to understand what is that people are complaining about their product. It was a insulin pen, which people used to actually inject insulin, and there was also forums around that where people could come and get support from how to use it and what's the challenges that they face and so on. We used to scrape that data and do some NER on top of that, and also try to understand what is that people are discussing about and so on. And this was pretty early, around like 2010 and so on. So we are not working with deep learning skills. We are using typical like HMM based techniques or MRF based techniques for NER and so on. But even then, the value that we could get out of that was quite good. Like it was super helpful to understand what is possible and what is not possible. And what's something that played an important role in those days, right? Feature engineering. See, you just cannot be a machine learning expert or a data science expert. You also have to understand the domain to a very good extent, which is still pretty much true these days also,
Yeah.
but not as important as it used to be. Because you have to know how to define these features, and these features made a huge world of difference in the way how your models work and so on. In 2014, I came back to India. I was with a couple of startups. One of them was in the telecom space, and other was in the e-commerce space. Both of them had interesting problems to solve. In one of the telco, we were actually trying to scale the market research to millions of users. Basically, in any big businesses which are customer oriented, they survey their customers on periodic basis, trying to understand who their customers are, what are their aspirations, how do you segment your customers, to which segment of the customers I should focus as a business, how should I communicate to them. But the problem with this, like these surveys and research, market research, as it is typically called, it's only done with few thousands of people, but the business segments such as telecom or even like banking might have millions of customers. So that is not a really good representation of your whole customer base, but still you cannot skip doing that because you really, you don't speak to customer in any other sense. So we try to combine both this psychographic market research and using usage as a proxy for this. So you speak to customers and also you try to see their usage. And though you will speak to only thousands of people, how can I scale this research to millions of users? And how can I understand about millions of my customers? That was in one of the startups in the context of telecom industry. And in another startup, we were mainly trying to build it called Index. We were trying to build a index of products. So if you see Google Maps as an index of locations, we're
Yeah.
trying to build an index of products. We're scraping like more than 5,000 odd e-commerce stores across the globe, and we had close to 2 billion products in our database. But garbage in, garbage out, right? Like if all these are like HTML things that you're scraped in, like it's not a so good use. So you have to use some NLP techniques to organize this data, extract insights out of this data, and so on. So we were using machine learning techniques such as classification, again like NER, attribute extraction, and so on. So this is one place in my career which is also like tipping point where I was supposed to move from traditional ML to deep learning. So in this case, like I had gone through a problem where it was taking us a lot of time for us to actually like iterate over the problem, build the improvement in the model, but switching to a deep learning based approach really helped a lot. We could discuss more in the details of that probably like in the discussion. This is again like one natural realization which came in. Okay, you have more data, then probably like switching to deep learning makes sense. And after this, I was with Ericsson again, back in Ericsson again for a few years as a applied researcher in the telecom space, where I was working in areas such as federated learning and reinforcement learning, IoT a bit. And now I am with Google, mostly at working in the telco space, focusing on helping telcos realize value out of their data. So that's the quick summary. Probably it's not quick.
No, but
Thanks for having me, and anyway.
yeah, that's I will say that's a great summary. Lot of work since 2008 and all these years. So, open question, like the startups, right? Like you have worked on RapidMiner, and RapidMiner was also kind of in the initial days was kind of startups
Yep.
with an idea of having a no code kind of AI, right? That's the problem they wanted to solve. Like, how can I just simply drag and drop uh, some of the simple, and it may not be nowadays. I think it also has neural networks, and you can also like import modules and do
Yep. Yep.
NER and like do a lot of stuff. Um, but for a startup, right? Like how and especially for an AI startup. Now there can be two kind of startups, right? One startup is a business startup, which is let's say in marketing, finance, telecom, any of these domains, and I just use AI. The second startup is it's positioned towards AI, like it's a pure AI startup. The whole goal is AI. So what how these startups, right, like which are purely AI startups, how difficult is for them to get customers, to position what they want to achieve, um, right? Like no code AI solution was a kind of a problem which they focused on. But if someone wants to open an AI startup, like what can be the journey, like how should he think about it? Uh,
Yep. Great question. Yeah. But before I share my insight, right, like the most of the startups that I've seen or I've been part of, you all know very well that a startup is also something that clearly shouts out that the probability of success is pretty low. Probably like
yeah,
99% of the startups are going to fail. Maybe that 1% or even less than 1% are going to become successful, and out of that, probably even lesser persons are going to become unicorn and so on. I think that mindset is something that's pretty important when you're working in startups. So otherwise, like startups are really not a way to make quick fame or quick money and so on.
yeah,
And when I'm part of these startups, when I was part of these startups, the one important lesson that I took away is right, like it's always the journey that actually helps you. and what you learn on day-to-day basis, the kind of challenges that you have to tackle, and the time frame in which you have to tackle, and the innovative thought process that you have to put in to find a solution, right? I think that keeps you on your toes always, and that makes you a better person overall. And of course, like you will have to balance out so many things. So the short answer to your question is yeah, it's always going to be hard to find customers, right? Irrespective of whether you are in the AA space or so on. And being a close observer in some of the startups, I can share from my experience what worked and probably what did not work. In case of RapidMiner, it was incubated at TU Dortmund. So it was coming out from a academic setup where people did PhDs and they had this vision and they started out, and so they had a academic backing when they started out. So which was a very good thing because like you could connect to bright minds, and it started as an open source project. It was called as Yale first before it changed its name to RapidMiner, and it had a lot of academic following. Even still today, it has many people used and it also had the promise of like doing ML without coding. But once you start using more, you would also realize you'll have to start building blocks. You will still need to apply logic and other things like though you're coding in a different environment, still you would be coding. But many things had templates and you could just pull in a data set and then you could do things. This excited a lot of researchers who are not from computer science background. So because like I have seen like a lot of physicists using RapidMiner. TU Dortmund, the astrophysics people, they are using RapidMiner in ways probably like nobody has seen. They are using it to analyze the satellite data. They're using it to analyze some other computation and so on. So this was like a very good eye-opening thing for me. What really, how does it really help the product? It actually battle tests the product to scalability and to solve much more complex problems. And it also creates a following for the product, right? See, when you know why is it hard for us to switch from Word, right? Like we are used to it. So though so many new things come, even if we are using them, we'll call them as Word and Excel. So similarly, I think RapidMiner had a great following.
Yeah.
Eventually, like people are using
Even
in
till
academic
now.
setup.
Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep. It has
Great.
a great following. So when you end up in industry after your academia, your natural, you have a natural attraction to try out to solve problems on using what tools you know. So building a stickiness and building a following is very important. And in this
Yeah.
case, it was also done via open source, right? Many open source products do that. Like you build open source, you build a following around that, and once you are following, you also see how to monetize that. At least in the initial days of RapidMiner also had a consulting arm, right? There is a product development arm. There are two again. Like you'll have to look for multiple channels in which you could make revenue. So it's not like you have a product, I'm selling this product and then I'll make money. Yeah, probably like that will work for few, but not for everyone. Like, so if you can also offer services around like consulting around how to use the product, how to set up the phone. So then it was not called data scientists, but people had a strong experts like data science experts who would actually directly speak to customers. They will actually set up the pipelines using RapidMiner for people to solve the problem. I know that there are some popular companies who are using RapidMiner for analyzing patent data to understand, how my competitors are filing patents for which area I'm doing good, and these kind of problems, right? You can solve only with an expert and who knows like how to deal with the data and who also knows how to deal with the tool. So creating multiple streams of revenue was really something that was helpful. And also as you grow bigger, you'll have to pivot on your strategy to find more customers. So you take some investment, you have to figure out how you scale, either you invest or you find investment. All these things also happen in the journey while I was with Rapidman. And with respect to other startups, a couple of startups where I was part of, Zonan Analytics is the startup which was in the telecom analytics space. See, this founders had strong connect in the telecom industry. So they were a mix of both market research experts and telecom experts, and we could pull in the couple of customers who are actually brave enough to try out this wild idea. Hey, we could scale market research with help of machine learning, and we also proved that yes, it could work. So this is something like where you have some domain experts who come together who have a very good network connect and who have some sort of reputation. So you can buy some time to prove the value. So one particular challenge with the ML or even data science products is you're not going to show the product and then you're going to ask money, or you will not be able to show the value and then ask money, because it always takes time to get value from the data. Every data tells a different story. So you'll have to spend time on dealing with the data, and whatever you believe may be different from whatever the data says. So it's not like you can promise something out of it before. So all this challenge is something any AI startup would have, and it's not easy to address unless you prove the value on customer specific problem and data. That's where I think reputation and having a credential history helps. Like being able to show that hey, we have done this and it works. So that reputation really helps.
Yeah, I think great way of putting it. Like, number one is no fear of failing, you mentioned, which is true to all the startups, whether AI or not. And then how data is very important from AI startup perspective, how connections are important, how channels are important. Like you mentioned, various channels of revenue, um, making sure your product is solving the right problem, um, which people have, keeping it open source, like you mentioned. Like all these are extremely valid points. So in your journey, right, the cloud engineering or the cloud systems, right? Like way back when even when I started, the cloud was not so famous. Even it was not there at all. Like people were not knowing cloud, but still there were some kind of analytics. Statistics was always there, right? Like some kind of analytics, some kind of visualization was there. How you think cloud has revolutionized um the AI space, specifically with concepts like ML ops. So if you can help our audience here, what is ML ops? How the cloud has done the revolution in this field?
I think that's a very important question. And again, like this is also one pivoting point in this whole thing, right? Like in my whole career, like how I started using cloud and so on. Right? And it's a coincidence or not, I don't know. Like I think the migration to both cloud and deep learning kind of happened in the same time in my career, at least to me. Like I had to uptake both of them in a similar time, like or at the same time. So to start with cloud, right? Like the great challenge. One of the challenges that I had was like you had to have access to some bigger machines when you are dealing with good amount of data, and you also have to have access to GPUs if you're using deep learning. But let's keep aside GPUs for a moment. Even for doing some traditional ML, right? You needed big machines. When I say big machines, these are machines which will have like good sizable RAM, like more than 50 GB, and which are like server machines, like which will have like more than 16 cores or even like 32 cores of CPU and so on. And that's where you could actually experiment on multiple algorithms on, because like iteration time is always important. So you might be dealing with some data which you could put on tests on traditional ML. Still, like you will have to do some iteration. You'll have to do some tuning of hyperparameters to figure out which model works out the best and so on, right? So the faster the turnaround is, the faster you're making progress. I suppose. So these big machines were really proving to have a problem. Like you can hire more people easily, but you cannot buy big machines. So you might have more experts and you cannot buy these big machines. They are capital expenditure, which means like there were times like where I used to, order a server and we would wait for 3 months for it to arrive. Where we would meticulously think for 2 months as to what the specifications of this server should be and so on, right? And then you place order, then it takes like 2 to 3 months for it to arrive. then you feel like, yeah, you have like kind of Lamborghini and then you sit and then drive. You do or run all these algorithms and so on, right? That's how it used to be. But with the change of cloud, like now you could get these things probably like pretty much like in a matter of seconds or minutes. But what has really like changed is right, like this gives organizations ability to scale both their work and also people. So with servers, you could scale your work, but scaling people was still a challenge. Like, see, you cannot hire more than it's because like server has anyway like limited capacity. However, with cloud, like anybody could request resource and they could use it, which means like you could even bring in a expert consultant for some time and give him a separate infrastructure to do something meaningful. And all this is like opening up new gates. So in the context of my experience, we were dealing with 2 billion products, I told you. And we were training a model that was using pretty traditional linear SVM. And we were trying to classify products into taxonomies. So if you go to e-commerce website, typically they would show breadcrumbs on the top, like clothing, activewear, men's, and so on, right? This is what we call as a taxonomy. And we had close to 8,000 leaves in the taxonomy. So it was a large scale hierarchical classification problem. And around 2010, I guess, like we were training these models using traditional MLs and linear SVM was a good choice. Like that was the best performing model. And there used to be like multiple levels of model, like one model that figures out what the top level, whether it is clothing or electronics. And then there's a second model which finds the leaf. And so training this problem model was a big problem because you needed a very big server. You had 2 billion products and preparing the training data and test data and validation. We were using Spark, but still to train this, we needed a big machine. And as time passed, like we were also like hitting the maximum that we could extract out of this. As the data size increases, the noise is also increasing. Like if you're not, because like this is internet says internet data, and not every e-commerce company puts in the same amount of care into their page, right? Like so the noise was also increasing, and eventually it was getting very difficult for us to extract any meaningful improvement on this model. By that, like what I mean by meaningful improvement is like when you do a model change, it's even many times inconclusive whether you have improved something or not. So we used to sample some data and we create the predictions and we will send it to humans for verification. That's what we call a spot check. We were investing money in this, we were doing this, like there were like 8 to 10 people who do this for 1 week together, manually looking like thousands of products, whether their assignments are correct and so on. But the results would be inconclusive. Right? So this was a challenge because like we were not able to scale and we were not able to iterate quickly. It was because like we were not able to try out different classes of models and so on. And we were also like doing pre-processing and other stuff, mostly using Python scripts, and it was also difficult. So first I started with moving the pre-processing part to cloud. So this is when we built some Spark pipelines where we pre-processed the data and exported them as NumPy arrays, which we could feed into the ML training algorithms. We were using scikit-learn models. So for that, we were using cloud. So every time we wanted to pre-process, we would set up a Spark cluster and we hold the data in GCS or Azure Blob Storage, and not Azure, AWS Blob Storage, and we would take that data in, process it in Spark, and we would dump back the data again in S3, then use that for training. And we were also using services from a company called Cubole then. So auto scaling and other things were made much more easy by Cubole then. So this helped us to scale pretty drastically because like we are actually not doing all things on this big server, and we could isolate the pre-processing part. To give you a context, like the pre-processing part was taking like 2 days, like close to almost 48 hours. And we could get it done in 2 hours or something like that now. With And which means like we could actually fix these bugs in the also can be done quickly and we can test them quickly. So that increased our iteration speed drastically. And this was not possible without cloud,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And also in addition to on top of this, right, like we also found that we could also use a similar approach for modeling as well. I mean, like instead of using instead of using a single big machine, we could also like use multiple smaller machines and do some distributed training. That was the thought process in which we wanted to also apply for the modeling. But then federated learning as a concept itself was not quite popular there, or we were not thinking in terms of deep learning then. We were just trying to see if there is a way that we can break down the modeling into multiple subproblems. Because like we had fair amount of success with pre-processing. But the solution came in a different way. Rather than using it approaching it in a traditional ML problem, we all were also trying out various classes of model, and we stumbled upon word embeddings then. Again, like that was a time when Word2Vec was also getting popular and Word2Vec word embeddings were. And you could learn these word embeddings from again like Spark. Like you can distribute how you could learn them. Right? And we started with exploring word embeddings, and we found very good results. That helped us to actually get rid of this. Like you could learn again, like use a Spark cluster to learn these embeddings and so on. We took it to next level. Even there was subsequent versions of embeddings, something called FastX, which came out, which did not even need a cluster for training. You could do it in a just a single powerful machine. It did not need a CPU, GPU. You could train it on a CPU literally. So that actually made wonders to our problem. So we just used FastX, and FastX was built on something called, it supported something called hierarchical softmax, which is a very neat trick. So you could train your classification models, and also you could learn your embeddings, and all in a matter of minutes rather than like hours or so on. So this neat trick helped us to actually build a model and iterate it in matter of like 20 minutes or 30 minutes rather than actually training for 24 hours or something like that. So this enabled us drastically. Now I can iterate faster. See the background of telling all these stories, right? See the need for ML ops comes only when you can iterate faster,
Yeah,
right? See, otherwise, like you're waiting and you're running a model training and then you're waiting for that and then you're just chilling.
yeah,
Suddenly now I can actually train a model in 20 minutes, which used to take like 24 hours and 48 hours.
yeah,
Now I can create 10 versions of model in a day.
yeah.
And I can iterate like much more faster now, which means like I have to keep track of my results. I have to keep track of my performance, and I have to keep track of my running time. Everything becomes important.
And
I
even
have to set a
extending
pipeline.
extending
Yep.
that endpoint, or it's so easy, right? Like,
Yep.
yeah. So Lakshmi, coming to you, right? Like I know you have been to various startups as well, and I know we did a course together. So, uh, how were you able to apply the knowledge which you have gained on AI to your startups?
Okay, so the basic intent for applying for that particular AI course
Yeah,
was because I was already into this journey. So I was working on a data-driven product, and it's IoT-based product. So we were actually collecting data to work on energy efficiency problem. So we were typically looking at the um, middle level customers, which are, I mean, when I say mid-scale, they are actually underserved and they don't have any knowledge or know-how of how to save energy as well. So we were actually looking into a market which is little challenging because they have to be educated about it because they don't know anything about saving,
yeah,
leave alone the knowledge of AI and data and all that stuff. Um, they were unaware that they could actually save a lot of energy in their day-to-day operations just by switching off when it is not required. Okay, but that requires some trigger, some intervention, right? You will have to let them know. Or if there is a leakage, how will they know there is a leakage? Unless there is a data driven solution, you will not be able to let them know, or they will not know in any ways, right?
Yes.
So we thought we will have to get some solution and go there, start demonstrating the value. And that's when we started building a product which is called Geatics. Basically, it goes with energy analytics. So we started with that idea.
Very cool name.
Um, yeah. So we would actually be collecting data in seconds, minutes, in those frequencies. So we thought we will employ AI models as well, because when you talk about data at that level, you will have to use some kind of analysis on that data. You will have to make sense of the data, first of all, right? So that's when we will have to understand how to apply um, that, and knowledge I need to acquire from different sources. I need to apply that on the systems that I am actually developing, and also get in touch with people who are experts in that area. You should also be in a position to talk their language, right? So unless you are educated well about what you are what you are looking for and conveying what you are looking for, right, then how will you be able to successfully do that? So that actually drove me to the education part of it. So I'll have to educate myself
Yeah.
in AI. That's when I think we met.
Yeah.
And aftermath of that, while doing that particular course, I was working on many of the use cases, and it was easier for me to work on my use cases when I was doing that particular program. Um, then involve people and also talk their language and make them understand my problem. At the same time, when they actually try to explain technically, then I could actually converse with them with ease. So in those cases, it was very, very helpful. And I could actually apply that particular knowledge into in terms of, for example, analysis. When you start collecting data, we were actually doing pilots. So that's the best time to do a lot of experimentation. And you would actually get a lot of time to analyze as well, because you don't have paying customers at that time, and you can experiment whatever you want. And you would also play around with the use cases, identify new use cases as well. Okay, so you are actually playing around with data. So typically when you have data, and that's going to be in the frequency of 10 seconds and 1 minute, right? So you can imagine what kind of or amount of data that I will have, and what can actually be done with that particular data, and the variety that I can actually collect. So that also gives me the idea as to what kind of other data that I need to collect. So when I start collecting one kind of data, then I will understand this is not enough for me.
Yeah.
I will have to have a lot of other data which will complement this data.
Yeah.
Only then this actually gives me a 360-degree view,
Yeah.
right?
That's a great
So
point. Yeah.
yeah, so that actually helps in understanding how to apply it. Okay, and for example, when we talk about time series analysis, yeah, you can do time series analysis on that particular data, but end of it, what are you going to do? So is it just about forecasting and prediction, or are you going to come up with something which is very utilitarian, very useful for the people? Because when you go to the customers and talk to them that we are building a AI product, and the mid-scale customers, they already don't know what you are doing. And
Yeah.
if you talk about AI on top of it, they won't understand anything.
Yeah.
So we had to think through all the problems that we will go through. So it's not just about educating them about importance of collecting data and making sense of it, and also about making effective use of that particular data, building efficiency, productivity, and that too at scale,
Yeah.
right? So you will have to create that awareness, and even to create that awareness and education, you need AI.
Yeah.
You can't build everything overnight. So
Yeah.
if you have to build something like that, then that has to be another product, right? So
Yeah.
even for that, you will need AI.
Yeah.
So we were actually thinking through all those use cases, and AI is predominantly useful in all the use cases that I said. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens is, um, people want to look at the value. Okay. So mainly when you talk about AI, it's going to be in the product journey, product development or product management journey. It actually starts with the idea generation. Okay. So from there on, once you have the idea, then you will have to do a lot of market research. It's not easy that you can translate this idea into a product so easily. So you will have to do a lot of market research. Even for market research, you can leverage AI.
Yeah.
You can understand what you can do with this. And then you go to the stage of product development. And in product development also, AI can play a crucial role because what you are there for building efficiency. You are there for reducing the redundancy. You are there for reducing the cost,
Yeah.
right? And if you have to do all this, then where are those things going to come from? You will have to implement AI solutions. Only then you are going to get them. And you can't build as a startup, right? You can't build a huge team on day one.
Yeah.
So you can actually make use of AI and the products which are available in the market, and probably you can build your own utilities in a small level and start using them. Probably tomorrow, who knows that it can actually become a bigger product. Okay, so
Exactly.
that's in the product development cycle. And after you develop your product, you will have to look at doing pilots. You will have to look at um, paid customers, right? When you talk about paid customers, you will have to look at customer acquisition and customer engagement. So most important part of any startup,
Yeah.
right? So you can actually use AI. AI is going to empower any startup to effectively target their potential customers and how to retain them. So customer retention is also very important. So for example, again, we are coming back to analytics. So we are typically talking about, if you have a software product, then we are talking about the product analytics.
Yeah.
So how are you going to make sense of that particular data? And uh, again, it's the turn of AI there, right? So AI powered marketing automation solutions you are going to use in getting new customers, okay, and retaining customers, keeping them engaged all the time,
Yeah.
okay, for retention.
Yeah.
And once you do that, you have customers. Now it's time for you to actually grow. So you will have to scale. You will have to scale efficiently as well. So you need to have all the controls at the relevant places
Yeah.
so that things don't fail when you are growing. So it's not enough that you did a good job when you were at the beginning stages, but when you are growing, things are breaking down. No, people are not going to accept that. So you need to build in process. You need to build in efficiencies, and the scalability also should be seamless. So as Venki was speaking about it some time ago about cloud, and cloud here actually plays an important role. Even in terms of reducing cost, and also and bringing in the cost reduction perspective,
Yeah.
right?
So
So
a question
yeah,
here, right? Like, imagine I'm a startup and I'm like, normally startups lack funds, right? When they start.
right,
Um, and let's say I want to create, and Venki, more towards you, because I want, you are more inclined towards data engineering. Like, I want to create that machine learning pipeline, right? Like that end to end machine learning flow, but I don't have money at this time, and even I'm small, so I don't need that money, right? How can I create that data engineering pipeline via open source technology, like without uh, to start with, and then gradually once I grow more, I fall back to cloud.
Okay. See, actually, you can do that pretty much like most of the. If you want to see, you'll have to approach it from a perspective of prototyping first,
Yeah,
right? So prototyping mostly can even done your laptop these days, right? Like
yeah,
it's not like take Spark for example. It doesn't change different. There's not a huge difference, right? Like then the Spark program that you can write will
yeah,
run the same program will run on the laptop and also it will run
yeah,
on the right. But cloud also is becoming very accessible these days. What I mean by that is, right, see, there are possibilities where you can get some initial credits as a part of startup accelerator programs from Azure,
okay, yeah,
GCP, and
yeah,
AWS, right? And it's also like still definitely you'll have to be watchful of your expenses. I think it's very important to understand like the problem that you want to solve and scope that into a reasonable size that you can budget it accordingly. You can start with prototyping with all your resources, all the resources that you have in your hand to start with. Once you have reasonable prototyping, test it in the cloud. I think that's the path how it would look
exactly.
like today.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. Like start with a prototype and then gradually
Yep.
move towards cloud. So, what's the importance of knowledge or education? I won't say knowledge, like education, like you have done masters, MS, and then PhD you are pursuing, and Lakshmi, you also did that course from MIT, right? What do you think is the importance of education in the field of AI? Like if someone wants to just go to Kaggle, right, and just read statistics, like can someone without that master degree or PhD pursue AI?
Yeah, absolutely. See, education is something, according to me, you are setting aside a dedicated time to
Time.
learn something in a focused manner.
Yeah,
See, you can do it from a university, you can do it on your own these days. Like my son does it from YouTube most of the time these days. Right? So doesn't matter where you get from, but you set aside some time to learn something that you master in a good enough manner that you can apply it in the real world context. I think that's what it matters. And if you also take the speed in which this field is actually like progressing, I think it's phenomenal, and no other field in science is actually progressing in the speed in which this field is evolving.
yeah,
And it is also reaching a point where probably like somebody, if they are starting today, for them to understand all the basics and get to the mastering the level of like the latest technologies, that it's going to take them years. It's not like
yeah,
it's going to take them. So education is a must in this space, and masters or PhDs are kind of thought of as proxies for people investing dedicated time to learn something, right? But if you do that time and if you also gain the knowledge without them, what really matters in the end of the day is, right, like are you able to actually apply these concepts in the real world setup, and are you get able to get value out of the data? I think that really matters more than whether you have a PhD or you have a master's
yeah.
and so on.
I agree.
That said, like these credentials do open up gates. Let's say if you're looking out for an interview, these do like open up gates for you in some places.
Yeah,
That's my 2 cents.
yeah. No, that's perfect. So coming to more fun questions, right? Like any favorite AI movie which you like and you want to talk about?
So I would say like my favorite one is Ex Machina. So this was about like yeah, humanoid AI which gets invented and who can actually do most of the things AI could do, a human could do, and it's hard to distinguish between whether it is a human or it is a robot. It was a fun thing, but I think we are getting close to what it was like.
Yeah, exactly. We are getting close to fiction. Lakshmi, any specific AI movie?
Yeah, I think there was one movie called Artificial Intelligence, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's one, and I think one of your choices as well, the Matrix,
The
and
Matrix.
we
Yeah.
have So, so I think they were actually fun to watch, and we were actually watching at a time when we thought all these things
Well,
possible. First of all, so
yeah. And Lakshmi,
so
one more question to you. Like I normally see you, you are also very spiritual, right? And I sometimes I feel, right, um, there is and there is always a debate that even all is simulated, right? Like everything is pre-decided, and our even human intelligence, right? We talk about human intelligence and animal intelligence and bird intelligence, like the intelligence of the creature. And even now we also realize that plants can also have that connectivity, right? Like the trees are also connected. I was just having a word with one of my colleague the other day. uh, do you think that from a spiritual perspective, do you think that we all everything is predefined or predestined, even our intelligence, even the decisions we take? Forget about AI intelligence, right? Even the human intelligence is predefined, and we only take those decisions which are destined we are destined to take. Or do you think that it's not the case? Like what are your thoughts on this?
okay. So see, I believe that there is a framework to live. Okay, so it's about framework. So somebody gives you a framework. For example, let us talk about coding framework, right? So you will actually make use of the framework, but there will always be exceptions. If your requirement is such that you will have to break few things which are there in the framework, then you would actually do it. Okay. Um, but with a good intention, right? Not with the intention of breaking the framework, but with the intention of getting few things done. Probably that will get included in the future version of the framework. Okay, so we are actually talking about something like an open source system, okay,
Mhm.
which will adapt itself over a period of time with the kind of work that you are doing, right? So it gives you a framework, you start working on it, and you attain some expertise, and you try to actually expand the horizon of the framework. So that's how you should actually look at.
Yeah.
So there is nothing like predefined, um, I mean, what do you say? Predefined.
Predestined or
Yeah,
predefined decisions. It's
correct.
human will
So there
what
is
we
nothing
choose.
like that. I would say it is all a framework given to you.
Hmm.
Okay. So you will actually have to understand there are a few things like this. And then you will also have to experiment, understand what you are made up of,
Yeah.
right? So when you try to experiment with it, you will understand why certain things are actually predefined, okay, and why we cannot break few things, why we are not asked to break few things, and where we can actually break few things. Okay, so you will actually understand in the process. It comes with the maturity. It's not an easy task, and that's why when you look at the spirituality world, the day one they will not be given that particular freedom. So there is something called free will. Okay, so it'll happen according to that. But day one, when they are students, um, they'll ask to sit at one place and start practicing few things regularly
Hmm.
without breaking that particular
Freedom.
in that particular period, right?
Yeah.
So the importance of that is they are setting a rule there. So you should not break it. You should not break that rule. Why? Because for you to mature and go to the next stage, you will have to do that. So they will give you in modules. You will have to undergo them in different modules. And as you mature, the teacher uh, who teaches you, who is actually monitoring you, will know in what dosage you will have to be fed that information. So you will not be fed everything on day one. So on day one, what is required, that will be given. Day two, day three, day four,
So it's a
and it
progression.
goes to
Yeah.
right. So it is actually gradual. It happens over a period of maturity, And with that maturity, you will also understand a lot of things. You will be very inquisitive. You will have a lot of questions. You would have got those questions answered as well in the journey. So it should actually match. Okay. Your maturity level and where you are breaking what should actually match. Okay. So if that actually happens, then that's how it's going to be. Life is going to be. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you will actually understand there are no rigid rules.
Yeah,
Okay. So everything is flexible, everything is open framework, everything is open source.
I
Okay.
think that's the best note now to end the conversation. That nothing, like, always keep on trying. It's open source. There is a human free will, and the more you adapt to the rules, right? And it's a progression. So,
Yeah.
having said that, thank you so much, Venki and Lakshmi, for coming to the podcast, for sparing time during a Sunday. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Angad. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Thank you.